Social philosopher Jurgen Habermas said that communication is that key which can help us solve many problems. In this particular episode of our communication studies, we try to understand what are the forms of social action. We also try to analyze how does rationality become that important factor in the entire communication scenario, and especially in line with the communicative action theory. To tell us more on the subject, we have with us Dr. Soumya Suvradas. He is a PhD scholar. He's also a teacher in mass communication, and he's also an independent filmmaker. And to take you throughout the show, I'm Amartya Shaha, and with me I have
Indrani Bhaumik.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
If you could elaborate, what are the forms of social action?
Yes, according to Jurgen Habermas, he has propounded 4 social actions based on sociological theory. Now, the 4 actions are: firstly, the teleological action; secondly, it is the norm-regulated action; the third action is dramaturgical action; and the fourth one is communicative action. Now, I will try to elaborate these 4 actions. Teleological action, as you know that teleology, this word, comes from the word telos, which means the end. So, this kind of an action always involves individuals who would carry out social or any kind of actions for a goal-oriented purpose. Now, strategic action is one of the best examples that we have in teleological action. For example, war. War is a teleological action because you are concerned not about all the people, but you have a competitiveness and you have a certain goal of achievement. For example, strategic communication, which is very much in vogue in marketing studies or management. Okay, now strategic action is used by capitalism, is used by bureaucracy, is used by a lot of powerful agencies because it does undermine the equality, because the speaker and the listener, they are not on equal pedestal, they are in unequal pedestal, and it is always one-way flow. Okay, so that's why we always, in this kind of an action, we always listen to the speaker, but there is no other way where the listeners will interact with the speaker. The second type of action is norm-regulated action, which is the social norms are followed by the members of the society, for example, religious customs. The third one is dramaturgical action, which is very much personal. For example, my personal style, the way I do my work, the way I speak, the way I dress up, all these things comprise dramaturgical action. But what Jurgen Habermas pays attention to is communicative action. Communicative action is a way in which you can undermine all these inequalities of the society, where all the members of the society will be speaking their mind out without any inhibition and will get equal opportunities. Okay. But for communicative action, you have to have some presuppositions. In war also we say that there is communication, in media we say communication, in politics there is communication, but what it lacks is the idea of rationality. That's what Jurgen Habermas works on. The communicative action has to have certain amount of rationality, which makes it communicative rationality, which we call communicative rationality. Now, we should pay a little more importance to this word rationality.
What is rationality that you're referring to?
Now, we all have studied in our history books, in our schools, that rationality has been one of the key ideas of enlightenment. But in course of time, this idea of rationality has been attacked by various forms of theoreticians, various philosophers, because it has valid reasons too. Now, rationality after enlightenment and age of reason in Western philosophy has been encaved in a cage. Almost it is very it is a tightrope walk where in the name of rationality we are losing individual freedom, human expressions and so on. And in later development of capitalism, we have seen that how rationality has been the weapon of capitalist manipulations, powerful agencies in exploiting different social grounds and so on. Now, with the development of a lot of theories, especially post-structuralism, especially women's movements, feminists, they have their own criticism also. For example, women's studies or feminist studies looks at rationalism as a kind of a cloak of male domination.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it is in the name of rationality, I am executing some powerful actions in the name of rationality. We are doing something which is very much dominated by a particular gender. That's how the feminists look at it. The post-structuralists look at rationality as a form of power. For example, state. For example, any powerful organization which has an upper hand on the common mass. For example, huge media industries. In the name of rationality, they execute a lot of powerful things which leaves common human beings undone. Now, what Jurgen Habermas is trying to address is this repressive character of rationality as we find in our contemporary time. But at the same time, he has a huge faith on this idea of rationality, which is essentially, which is non-Asian in nature, and it has its history deep in the age of reason and enlightenment and so on, especially in Western philosophy. Now, Jurgen Habermas says something very significant, which is, in communicative action, language is our prime weapon. Through the use of language, we are expressing our minds, we are reaching an understanding. Now, language is what we know as the definition of language goes, it is the vehicle of thought and also a vehicle of expression. Now, with this rationality of language, we can make up arguments, we can put up arguments, and with these arguments, we can reach an understanding by sharing our mutual views.
But when you talk about the philosopher's idea of rationality, one question which comes to my head is how rational is his thought on rationality? Because he's talking about a mutual exchange.
Exactly.
He's talking about a common platform where there is no upper hand with someone. Exactly. Everyone is on the same platform. But is it a utopian thought? Is it a rational thought to think about this rationality?
Well, again, you have made the correct point, and it is quite surprising that the point and the question that has been thrown by you has been also thrown by the contemporary philosophers, and that's why the idea of rationality in its tradition has been questioned, how rational this rationality is.
Right.
And at the same time, Jurgen Habermas has found out that rationality in its traditional term has been very claustrophobic. That's why he reworks on this term called rationality, the idea of rationality, and he tries to redefine it. By rationality or by rational communication or communicative rationality, it breaks away the hierarchy. And by breaking the hierarchy, it doesn't only give importance to the agency, but also to its subjects. By agency, I mean any kind of organization or any kind of institution, school, state, any organization, any kind of educational sector, any kind of group or social gamut. And at the same time, these social gamuts and institutions are comprised of subjects, which makes up and which follows the dictum of that agency. Now, by communicative rationality, Jurgen Habermas talks about the act of speech, and he pays his attention not to the agency but to the subjects. There a field is created where the agency and the subject, they can interact with each other along with the other subjects in order to reach a perfect argument and a consensus. That is an understanding shared by all of us. That's what communicative rationality means, according to Jurgen Habermas. Now, you may say that it might seem to be a utopic idea. Of course it is. That's why he talks about the ideal speech situation. Now, this kind of communicative rationality is only possible in an ideal speech situation where two conditions have to be sufficed. The first condition, yes, the first condition is the participants should enjoy equal chance in communicative action. When we are sitting here, all three of us are the participants, of course, but we should always get equal opportunities. Okay, now this is not the ideal speech situation, because I am here giving my idea of what is communicative action, but this is not an ideal speech situation. It would have been an ideal speech situation if both of you would have shared and would have got the equal amount of time.
Right.
Okay, firstly. Secondly, the second condition of this ideal speech situation is every participant should speak their mind out. They should have their own interpretations, readings, and their analysis of the whole society or whatever crisis we are discussing about. So, these are the 2 points only at which we will achieve this situation, which is called ideal speech situation, which will only facilitate communicative rationality. Now, in this term, we come to the most important part of Jurgen Habermas's thesis. He talks about 2 systems that the world runs on. One is Lifeworld system and another one is Systemworld. Now, Lifeworld comprises of the public and the private sphere, and Systemworld, as we have derived it from sociological studies, it comprises of 2 functional categories of the society. One is economy and the other one is state. That's what the systems are, isn't it? So, economics is a system and state is also a system. Each and every nation has their own systems. But when it comes to Lifeworld, Lifeworld is the experiential world that individuals have. You have a particular life world and you are part of the system.
Right.
You are not the system, and also economics or state is not life world. So, I have my experiential life in everyday life. I have in that I have 2 categories. One is the public life. This is a public life, of course, this is not my private life. You are doing your work. This is also comprises of a public life. And when I go back home, I spend my time with my own people. Then I might have a private life. Now, very interesting things which have been observed by Jurgen Habermas. Lifeworld, for example, Lifeworld, if it is comprised of public and private spheres, of course, the culture, social organization, personal endeavors, social integration, all these things comprise of Lifeworld. Okay. And on the other, the system world, it is not comprised of any kind of human emotions. It is a system which has only functions, and this function is attributed to a particular goal. Economics has a function. State has its own goals. Now, an interesting thing has happened. Lifeworld has been the main crisis which Jurgen Habermas points out is that Lifeworld has been colonized by the system world. For example, to be more precise, public sphere and private sphere has been dictated by the economics and the state. And this situation has been the main crisis of our contemporary world. Now, we have to understand the position of state. State is a body which is there to govern the life of the citizens. its real definition, in its traditional definition, state will never do something in order to harm the interests of the citizen. So something is happening which is harming the citizens. It is maybe for economics, it is maybe for statist decisions, but at the same time you also have to feel that there is another force which is being into play, that is globalization. We cannot any nation or any state cannot disconnect itself from the global networks. So a war in the Middle East or some bombs are dropped by United States, it might have a huge repercussion on my private and public life. Because what is being dictated there with the connection of globalization is the economics. And the state has to take some very unfavorable decisions maybe, which might be in the long run, which might be good for the system, but at the same time which might affect a lot of groups of people. So that's why Jurgen Habermas is saying that there in this contemporary world there is a huge colonization of the life world by the system world. So life world is colonized. For example, private sphere is meant for commitment. Now I have some commitments towards my family, same as yours, same as everyone. Now public sphere has the influence. It is marked by influence. The way I speak at a public place, it renders some kind of influence. In the same way, economy is symbolized by money and state is represented by the power. Now money and power, you will always find that it influences the commitment and the public standing of the individual. It has always been so, and with the recent problems of recession and inflation, we are witnessing it every day. Now what Habermas wants is decolonization of life world. Now this crisis can only be solved if life world is decolonized. And how this decolonization will happen? This will be happening only by communicative rationality, which incorporates communicative action.
So we come to this particular conclusion, as we would like to think, that life world has to be decolonized.
Of course.
So if you sum up the way in which the social philosopher has pointed it out, how would you sum up and what is the way to really come out of it?
Now in fact, communicative rationality or communicative action has been in vogue for a number of years. For example, till now, I'll give you just one example which will be speaking my mind out and this idea. For example, gender studies has been a recent discipline, has been a new discipline in academics, and what we find here is that however Marxist studies, however structural studies, psychoanalysis have been done, we have been overlooking the problems of gender. Now from 1970s and 80s, we have been seeing that various gender types have been revolting for equality, and normal common people are coming to an understanding that each and every gender has to be acknowledged. Even 15 years ago, we were intolerant of various types of genders who cannot be categorized under male or female. We used to make fun of them, but now what we find is, after this communicative rationality, after communication, we are coming to a conclusion that yes, they also have the equal opportunities, because they have also been provided with a podium to speak their mind out, so that we have a better understanding of those genders more now than 20 years ago. So that's where communicative action, communicative rationality can be implemented, and the system world will be fought against to decolonize the life world.
Thank you so much for this
wonderful
sharing.
Okay, thank you.